continuing webinar series that we've been promoting training, especially while we're not in open enrollment and in that crazy time of year. So thanks for joining us. With me this morning is John Nichols. Now, I had a chance to meet John just back in January, and I met John through a NAPA meeting. As you guys know, KHI is very committed to our industry organizations, namely NAPA and health underwriters. And so I was at a NAPA meeting in January and met John, and I was just inspired by his call to action for all of us to get engaged in our industry. And wow, and so as we got to talking, and more specifically then the board of NAPA Central Iowa had a one-on-one private kind of session with John. And at the end of it, John offered to do a webinar for KHI and for our agents. And so I took him up on it. And I was fortunate enough also to get a copy of his book that he signed for me, and I read it, and I was so inspired. So just in a brief bio, I just want you to know a little bit about John before I turn it over to him. That John Nichols is a nationally recognized disability benefits consultant. He's the creator of disability products and administration systems. He's an expert witness in disability proceedings, and he serves as president of Disability Resource Group, a national insurance agency that he founded in '99. Now, without stealing John's thunder, I want to just let you know that in 1993, John had a near-death experience from a water ski accident that left him paralyzed from the neck down to his toes. Through 6 years of rehab, he reached a level of recovery that is less than 1% of all spinal cord injury patients attain. I just get goosebumps when I read this and when I read John's book. I want to get you right over to John and spend the rest of the time that we have together with John. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to John and just again thank you. And John tells us today we will learn the 5 universal principles that John uses to grow his business and his life. And with that, John, let me turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Lynn, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for taking the time today to visit and learn, quite frankly, these 5 universal principles. It's absolutely critical if we're going to get something out of our time together is we want to learn and be able to apply what we learn. And it may not all happen in the next 40, 45 minutes. And so my offer to each of you is that if you want further conversation, whether that be written or by voice, is take down my name and number, my email address. Feel welcome. Just like Lynn, feel welcome to reach out to me. I'd be happy to schedule up. I'm not charging money. I'm not selling tapes. I'm not. It isn't about that at all. It's about just serving. And since you've been gracious enough to spend a little time with me today, I'm happy to return the favor back to you. So if after today you want further communication, further contact, feel welcome to reach out to me. So, you know, with that said, what's my motivation? You know, and it truly is secondary to having you walk away with some learning and some application to your life, whether that be within your business or within your personal life. But what's my motivation? Well, my motivation is I'm writing my 3rd book, and it's going to be wrapped around the concept of daily victories. By doing this, it helps me learn, helps me grow. Maybe there's an opportunity for us to do business, maybe not. It's an opportunity to build on the relationships I have with Lynn and meet some new people and hopefully have some fun along the way. So ultimately, what's our goal today? To learn the 5 universal principles that I've applied. And then I'm going to share with some stories over the last 10, 15 years on how I've applied these principles to achieve, you know, some of my definition of success. Now, with that said, I just going to put it out here, and then we'll just move right into it, is I am going to share some success, or what I've had some success in my business and my personal life. There'll be a little bit of ego in it. It's really not what it's about, but what I've learned is that if we don't use concrete examples, how do you learn how to apply it? And so, yes, I am going to tell you I started Disability Resource Group in October of '99. I had $2,500 in the bank, and I've grown it to a $25 million operation. And yeah, there's some ego. but ultimately I've been able to apply these principles to grow a business that I'm passionate about and just having some fun doing it. So with that said, let's jump into some of this content and know that we will have opportunity for questions. So if you have questions, jot them down, put them into the chat box, raise your hand, and we'll certainly get through as many as we can today. So this front picture, it's actually a view of the moon rise out in Lyons, Colorado. I happen to have a home out there. Get to look at these mountains every day, and just a tremendous inspiration for me. So daily victories. Well, achieving success in any economy. I was asked to speak at an event recently, and this was their brand for this particular day that they had, achieving success in any economy. And when I think about achieving success in any economy, whose economy are we really talking about? Think about it. Whose economy are we really talking about? And I would challenge you that it's our economy. And our economy is right in between our two ears. It's within our brain. It's within our body. It's within our spirit. And we are responsible for our own economy. And that's just one of those, ties into one of those universal principles that I'll get to. It's really our mindset. So one of the first stories that I want to share is that water skiing accident I had. It was 1993. I was on top of the world. I was the largest seller of HIV disability policies in the country. I had over 20,000 students participating in the program. I had 38 medical schools around the country, and I snuck a day off of work and had a water skiing accident. This accident was within 4 feet of water, and yet I went through this drowning episode because I was unable to get my head above the water line to breathe. And so I went through this drowning episode. And as fate would have it, a buddy of mine swam out, got to me, and was able to perform CPR on me and bring me back to life. Well, I wake up in the hospital, and I was paralyzed from my chin all the way down to my toes. I was at the ripe old age of 32, and I was staring at my life wondering, what in the world am I going to do? And so this whole concept of daily victories evolved out of this crazy accident. Over a period of about 90 days, I went through a couple of surgeries, and the miracle started to unfold. It was very unanticipated. There really was no hope. I mean, I was learning at the time how to perform the activities of daily living, and yet I started to get some tingling in my left toes, and it worked its way up the left side of my body, and a couple weeks later, the same type of thing on the right side of my body. Well, spinal cord injuries are very debilitating, and when you have a spinal cord injury, what it does is it shuts down all the nerves that flow to your muscles. And so not only do you lose your muscle ability, and you also lose your muscle memory. So I literally, over a period of 6 years, had to relearn how to do everything. And I'm talking everything, from certainly walking to buttoning buttons, to shaving, to combing my hair. I mean, all those things that we take for granted, I had to retrain the body how to do it. Now, I didn't get it all back. I still have paralysis on the right side of my body. I have some nerve damage in my right hand, from my hips to my knees and my right foot. And yet, I am mobile. I am back on my feet. And I'm trying to operate at a very high level. Well, it was really let me start over. It was really 3 levels of recovery. The first level was 18 months. That got me back on my feet. And then it was really 6 years, and then that's when I was able to get back to work. And I started this company called Disability Resource Group. And then the last level of recovery was the last 6 years in which I've been able to build the body and start to run marathons. And when I say run, I mean, maybe jog. It's not your, it doesn't look like your typical running, but I certainly run the marathons, and it's really about charity fundraising, and I just happen to run marathons, and that's what it's all about. So how did the daily victories come into play? Well, number one, during this period of time, I had to have this mindset of daily victories. It was baby steps in order to learn how to walk again. I mean, I literally, the 10-foot parallel bars, I was doing 1 foot at a time, then it was 2 feet at a time, and the body was so tired, and it just didn't have the strength and capability to make it all the way down the end of the parallel bars. And from the parallel bars, over the course of a couple of weeks, I then graduated to the grandma walker, and then from the grandma walker, it was dual canes, and then eventually the single cane. And after a little over a year, I was finally able to get rid of the cane and walk under my own power. And so Daily Victories has now been with me since 93. So think about it just even today. So how do we apply this to your life today? This morning I got up, I do my daily victory. My first thing is I do a 6-minute plank. People are like, whoa, wait a minute, well, why would you do a 6-minute plank? What's the point of that? And it's all about starting my day with some positive passion, purpose, being grateful for being alive and having the opportunity to make a difference today. Let alone the 6-minute plank gets me into my exercise routine. I get to accomplish something right in the beginning of the day. It sets up my entire day because what happens during the day is we get a fair amount of rejection, or we get a fair amount of content coming into our brain, and what I want to do is start it off with positivity, not negativity. And so for me, that's one way that I apply daily victories, is I start off with the exercise. Well, next for me after that, I make my cup of coffee, and I'll have my favorite breakfast, and then I get my reading done. And whether that be the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Financial Times, I'll do some industry reading, I'll do some thought leadership reading, and I just try to fill up my mind with some positive energy from that. And then after that, I'll take a look at my schedule. I typically have it planned the day before, so I know who I'm calling. This morning, as an example, I've already had my first sales call. Actually visited with a client 30 minutes before this call. Got him moving forward in a good direction. So I made my first sale for the day, and then now I obviously have this call. And so that's kind of how my day begins, and it's all about trying to accomplish daily victories. So the second one, and this is a universal principle. You may have been exposed to it. It's from a book called The Common Denominator of Success, and it was a speech given by a gentleman by the name of Albert Gray. If you email me and you want that book, I'm happy to send it to you. It's a very short book, but one of the most powerful lessons from that content was this. Successful people do what unsuccessful people are unwilling to do. And that's important because it's all about the habits, right? And the discipline to create those habits and to do that work. But the most important piece is understanding why. Why in the world would I do a 6-minute plank? Why in the world would I make the phone calls and go through the rejection? Why in the world would I take the time to go learn how to train for a marathon? think about how that might apply to your life. What are those things? And ask yourself, well, why would I do that? And it's all about purpose. And so for me, the 6-minute plank is a way to start the day out in a positive manner, but it also, the more toned my body is, the better I can function. I can perform at a higher level when I'm at a particular weight and I have a particular diet. Why do I make the phone calls and accept the rejection? Because I believe so strongly in the value of disability coverage, of income protection, that I'm willing to make those phone calls. And why would I run the marathon? Well, it isn't the marathon itself, but it is about raising money for people that are less fortunate than me, people that have spinal cord injuries. And so for me, raising money for Spinal Cord Injury Association is one of my purposes. And so take the time to understand, what's your motivation? Why are you performing these habits, these activities? What's behind that? And what I try to do is I try to spend 80% of my time working in this arena. So I'm always trying to be on purpose. So what is my purpose? And this summed it up, and I wrote this about 12, 13 years ago. My purpose in life is to serve not only myself, but others with all my heart, with all my mind, and all my resources. It's exactly why when I met Lynn, I made that offer, because I totally connected with Lynn. Her passion, her leadership, her willingness to serve her customers, her clients, her friends, her family. We connected, and I said, hey, Lynn, I would love to have the opportunity to help serve, and here it is. And she took advantage of that opportunity. Take the time to write down what is your purpose in life. And I try to keep this front and center, so it's a great reminder of why am I doing this. One of my favorite cartoonists is Dilbert. The creator of Dilbert is a guy by the name of Scott Adams. And Scott Adams had an article out recently, and it was about happiness. What is happiness? And for Scott, it was happiness is freedom plus health. Freedom plus health. And I sat with that for a while, and I said, I'd like to add something to it, because I don't know if it captures all of it. And so for me, let me just get to that next slide. There it is. For me, happiness is certainly freedom and health. And for me, I have that freedom of choice, and certainly to be able to have my health back where I can be proactive. But for me, it was really had to add purpose. And I squared it, purpose squared. My neighbor at the time of the accident was a 70-year-old gentleman by the name of Joe. And I was doing some construction on my home, and I needed Joe's approval to get the permit. And so I went over and visited with Joe, and Joe and I had something in common. We both have a spinal cord injury. Unfortunately, Joe wasn't quite as fortunate as me. His accident was same level as mine, C5, C6, and yet he severed his spinal cord and was unable to get back to his feet. And Joe was living in his living room. I mean, literally in a bed in his living room. And that was his life. And he'd been that way for 20 years. His accident happened at age 50, and Joe was now closer to 70. And Joe and I connected. And Joe whispered to me, he said, hey, John, put the pillow over my face. I'm ready to go. Joe was ready to quit. Joe may have had some freedom. He certainly didn't have all of his health, but Joe couldn't find the purpose. His purpose had gone away, and he was ready to go. That's how strong, that's how powerful purpose can be. Once you lose your purpose, maybe you lose your life. So how do I apply this purpose and this daily victories? And I use Covey's activity. It's the 4-box matrix in Covey's book called The 7 Habits to Highly Effective People. And the 4-box matrix looks like this, and it involves 2 words, a U and an I. The U is urgent, and the I is important. And the 4-box matrix looks like this. I'm going to just put it all up, and then we can see it. There we go. So the first box is urgent and important. And it was like this morning was urgent and important. I had a client meeting, had my workout, had breakfast, had to get ready for this. And it was, these were pretty urgent and important activities. I had made the commitments, I had to follow it through. The second box is it's urgent, but it's not really important. And so think about what are the activities in your life that they're urgent, but they're really not important. And it could be, hey, boiling water, need to take care of cooking dinner. It's urgent, but it's maybe not important. Maybe even like this coffee this morning. It's urgent, I get coffee, but really the reality is how important is it? The box over there to the bottom right, not urgent, not important, opening up your junk mail. It's not urgent, not important. Hopefully you're delegating all of those activities. But the one box where I try to spend, again, a good 80% of my time is this box. It's the important but not the urgent. So think about your life and think about your business. What are those important activities that need to get done, but they're not urgent? And then that's probably client relationships. It's probably learning the knowledge. Today's activity, this hour that we're spending, it's probably important, right? At least that's my goal, is make it important, but it's, how urgent is it? And that's sharpening the saw. And it's working on yourself to improve yourself, your growth, your personal growth, your professional growth, but it's also your client relationships and delivering value to them, making those phone calls. Probably important, but it may not necessarily be urgent. After building a $25 million book of business, I probably could sit back and relax. But you know what? I could do that, day in and day out, but it just takes away, and then our saw becomes less sharp. And so I try to work on the important every day to keep the saw nice and sharp. So what's the third universal principle that I've employed over the last 15, 20 years? And one is successful people invest in themselves, they invest in their network, and they invest in their industry. I picked this up from LinkedIn, one of the co-founders of LinkedIn, and he said, yeah, the most successful people do invest in themselves, they invest in their network, and they invest in their industry. And by doing that, that allows them to leverage up. So here's just some things, and a little bit of ego here, but what I want to share is how, let me back up. My apologies. How have I applied this concept of investing in myself, my network, and my community? And what I try to do is I try to have all of these things work within my entire life, not just in one dimension. And so, my business relationships are actually, I also have social relationships, but I also have charitable relationships, and they all work together. And so within my charity life, the three organizations that I'm heavily involved in is one a high school back in Minnesota where I grew up. My goal was to raise $1 million for them. And I went on to do that and became one of three people that have done that in the history of that school. And I did that, one, because I'm passionate and I love the school and I'm connected with that school. And also what came out of that was deeper relationships and other opportunities arose out of that. And another one that I mentioned already was the spinal cord injuries. I raised a ton of money for spinal cord injuries. Why? Because I lived through it. I know what it's about. I know the impact it can have on kids. I see it. I've lived with it. I'm a peer-to-peer counselor for the organizations. And so my marathon running allowed me to not only stay fit, raise awareness for spinal cord injuries, but then I got to meet people. And then when you meet people, business happens. And so it's all connected. The MDRT Foundation, it's an industry organization. I'm involved in the MDRT Foundation, and by being involved in the foundation, again, I got to connect with my peers. I got to learn from my peers. I was raising money for causes that I believed in. And then one day, 2 years ago, the MDRT Foundation came back to me and said, hey, we'd like to make a donation to your charity of choice, and it was spinal cord injury. And it was that year that it all came together. The MDRT Foundation, my fundraising for the spinal cord injury, my marathon running, was raising money for Danielle at the time, and I became the #1 fundraiser for the Chicago Marathon. Unbelievable publicity, and it just happened. Not that I was looking for it, but all of a sudden it's there, and I had the opportunity to leverage it up. And so not only did I raise a significant amount of money, but then my business got promoted, and I got promoted, and just things happened from there. Within my industry, by being involved in my industry, I'm investing in my industry, whether that be through MDRT, Life Happens. I've been the spokesperson for Life Happens for Disability Awareness Month. And then most recently, my 30-year involvement with NAIFA, all of a sudden, it just came to a pinnacle. I signed an agreement January 30th, and it's my largest case, by far my largest case ever. And the CEO came over to me after they voted, and he pulled me aside and he said, very proud of you, all that you've done for us and all you've done for your industry. And I'm like, geez, what do you know about what I've done for my industry? Well, we did the research on you. We did your background check, et cetera. And you know what? All that volunteer work that you've done for NAIFA probably just paid off. And you know what? Coming from somebody from the outside of our industry, wow, you recognize that investing in my network, investing in our industry, it does pay dividends, and people do recognize that. One of my favorite stories is a woman by the name of Jill Judd, and Jill is on the NAIFA board, and what Jill does from a social aspect is she'll go bike riding and take hikes and running with her clients, and it's really not about the business, but it is about building relationship. Then you happen to do business along the way. So that was another little twist on how do you invest in yourself and in your network and in your community. And then lastly, with respect to community, and I put 2550, that happens to be the community that I live in. Do people know what you do in your community, in your neighborhood? I mean, and be very specific. Don't just say the insurance industry. Be very specific, because then they can deliver opportunities for you to work on. And I recognize that here in this community that I live in. Happens to be a professional athlete that lives in the building, and that professional athlete was able to introduce me to a certain group of people that I now have become the thought leader for disability insurance for athletes for this particular group. Well, if I wasn't specific about what I did for a living, that person just would have thought, he's just another insurance advisor. But because I was very specific on what I do, that person was able to connect me with the appropriate people, knowing that that was a concern of his and them. And then lastly, I talk about investing in myself, and I do that through education. Why did I go get a master's degree at the age of 48? Why would I take the time to do that? Well, it was all about continuing to learn for me. And I've been involved in Strategic Coach, and I've had other mentors and other coaches along the way, still involved in it. And quite frankly, I'm a big believer in professional growth. So I'm going to just switch gears real quick, and people have always asked me about how I do business. And how I do business is I walk people through a process versus a product. And this is just one example within the dental community that I use to help dentists understand how I conduct business. And so I just put this up here as just an additional information for your review. And probably the most important part is once you get past step one, the exploratory, the right fit call and right fit meeting, is step two. And for me, step two is the key. And it's having the conversation about dreams and goals, and then facts and figures. Not facts and figures first. I do dreams and goals first. So why would I do dreams and goals first? It's really because of John Maxwell's saying. And John Maxwell, I learned that the depth of communication equals that depth of relationship. So one of the keys to my success has been trying to have deep communication with my clients, with my friends, with my staff, because that'll create a depth of relationship. And this is just a schematic. I had a cartoonist on my team kind of build out these pictures for me, and it really just speaks to how I conduct business. And it's all about dreams and goals first. Once I know what your dreams and goals are, much, much easier to devise strategies around how I can help you accomplish your dreams and goals. Discovery, part two, it's the facts and figures. Once I do dreams and goals, then I'll get into the facts and figures. Our industry tends to train people the other way first, facts and figures first before the dreams and goals. And so I would just encourage you or remind you, think about them and what's going on in their life. Make sure you hear their story. If you hadn't known my story about my accident and my connection with spinal cord injuries, boy, you're missing out on a big chunk on what's so important to me. Last slide on kind of how I conduct business. This is a particular slide as I may use in front of business owners. Happy to provide this if this would be of any value to any of you. It talks about different areas in which a business might suffer if somebody became sick or hurt, whether that be loan protection or key person or buy-sell, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, number 4. We just got 2 left, and then we'll open up for Q&A. So, number 4 is successful people are always striving forward. So I gave a speech down in San Antonio a couple months ago, and this young man had asked me, he said, geez, John, with all this success that you've had in your life, when did you know that you finally made it? Successful people have never ever made it. We've never ever given in to the fact that, geez, we're done. We're always striving forward. My mission is so big and so important that every day counts, and I'm not at the finish line. The finish line, miles to go before we sleep, and so when I reflect back on my purpose in life, there's just more people to serve. There's more people to connect with. And so I've never ever felt that I'm finished. And it's not about, for me, it's not about the money, it's not about the size of my agency, it's about the number of people that we serve. It's about the depth of relationships that we have with people. For me, it's never been about the scorecard on geez, who's got the bigger house or the bigger car. I don't really care. What I do care about is how we serve people and the number of people we can serve successfully. Just know that each one of these universal principles, I could probably spend an hour on. I'm just kind of picking particular areas. This one on balance, always striving forward. I grew up in this world of people trying to persuade me that, geez, you're out of balance, and your balance had to be 4 equal parts. And quite frankly, no. That isn't necessarily how I view the world. How I view the world is this is balance. It's about applying my daily victories with all my mind, with all my body, with all my soul, and have positive thought action, using my spirit and my heart as a guide. And I want to make sure that these are in alignment, so that I'm living a life of integrity. So I'm living a life that's true to my values and true to my ethics, and so I can be a great role model for other people, right? But most importantly, I'm a great role model for myself. I live up to my standard first, and I do that through these daily victories. And so I try to have alignment within my mind, within my body, and with my soul. And I'll just kind of simplify it. Workouts for me are just part of my work day. If I'm going to work 10 hours a day, 90 minutes of that is going to be a workout. And some people might call that recess. Well, maybe that's what it is. And that's just an important value for me, is to make sure that my body and my mind and my heart are in a great place, and my workouts help me do that. They keep me in alignment so I can live a life of integrity, but I can also live a life on purpose at a very high level. Lastly, number 5, positioning. And this concept is about surrounding yourself with the people and the resources and programs that can help leverage you up. And I've done that by places where I've lived. I've done it by participating in the industry, whether that be MDRT or NAHU or NAFA. I meet people that can help. We can help each other get to where we want to go. I do that by participating in coaching programs, and I try to surround myself with the people that I want to be around, the positive, productive, purposeful people. And I'll just give you one quick example. Yesterday I was on the phone with an MDRT speaker. I'm volunteering at MDRT in Louisiana in June, and I'm a speaker liaison. Well, why in the world would I take the time to do that? Well, as it turns out, this particular speaker I had met before, and met him out in Colorado at a speaking event. And so we reconnected, shared some time with each other last night. And before we hung up, he said, geez, by the way, would you ever have any interest in doing some business with me? And geez, of course I would. And so it's all about positioning. And so one way to think about positioning is get yourself positioned so that people ask you, what do you do for a living? And when they ask you, what do you do for a living, your job is to tell them what you do for a living, but in a way that makes them say, geez, how do you do that? Or I'd like to learn more. And so think about where the types of people that you want to meet, where do they play, where do they learn, where do they live their life? What restaurants are they at? What workout clubs are they at? What museums are they at? Where are they traveling to? Where can you connect with that group of people? Because they will always ask, hey, what is it that you do for a living? Well, I help people live out their dreams and goals. But geez, tell me more. How do you do that? Well, I do that by walking people through a 5-step process that helps them identify their dreams and goals, helps them identify strategies to implement to accomplish those dreams and goals, and then a follow-up program to make sure we stay on track. Geez, I'd like to learn more. Would you be interested in a 10-minute visit so we can discuss that further, et cetera, et cetera. One other concept of positioning is this environment of commitment. This has probably been one of my keys to not only my physical recovery, but also my mental recovery. It's also been one of the keys to my success within my business, certainly my success within NAFA. And it's all about surrounding myself in this environment of commitment. Imagine being the president of NAFA or any organization that's a public organization. If you're in that position, nobody really wants to publicly fail. And certainly, I don't want to publicly fail. And so just by participating in that made me perform at a higher level. I prepared more. I studied more. I made sure I was on time. I made sure that I had the capability, I had the resources, I had the people to support me as I went through that whole process. And it's that concept that has helped me achieve the physical success I wanted as well as the business success that I wanted. It's because I created this environment of commitment, because nobody wants to fail. And I fail all the time, privately, sometimes publicly, and it's what you do with that failure. It's what you do with that failure. You learn from it, you grow from it, you take the next step. Some people have always looked at me and they think, well, success looks like this straight line. And it's just a skyrocket. Went from 38 medical schools to where I am today, a gazillion, and yet, quite frankly, my success has been really messy. But it's how I dealt with that adversity, and to be able to overcome that adversity, and to not let the adversity define me. Or if it is going to define me, it defines me in a positive way, not in a negative way. Every one of us has a story. I truly believe it. And every one of our clients have a story. Truly believe it. And it's our job as advisors to learn those stories, to walk that path with our clients, with our friends, with our neighbors, with our families, and yet keep pushing forward, keep striving forward. Have that daily mindset of positive victories. So let me just review, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So 1, daily victories, that mindset, right? Number 2, we create the habits, but we do it with our purpose in mind. Remember, what are those habits that we're willing to do that unsuccessful people aren't? Number 3 was we're always striving forward. Number 4 is we surround ourselves with the people, resources, and programs to leverage up. And number 5 is we invest in ourselves, we invest in our network, and we invest in our community. So Lynn, I'll turn it over back to you. We have plenty of time. It's about 9:42. Be happy to answer any questions. First and foremost, I want to thank everybody for the opportunity to visit with you. I may have a closing story, but why don't we see if we have any Q&A.
Okay, well, I'm back. This is Lynn, and I'll check to see if you have any questions. Raise your hand. We can unmute your microphone. But I just want to say thanks to John. I hope you guys each took something out of what John had to say today. And he mentioned it several times, and that's what's so in alignment with KHI, and that is the active service of what we do and what motivates us. And I challenge you to just maybe jot down what is your why? Why do you do what you do? And finding your purpose in your why. And when you go out with that service mentality, which is really what we try to promote at KHI, that it's all about service. Because when we do that and we serve others, then good things happen. We get put in the right situations or meet the right people, or that sale comes through to pay the bills, etc. So look at here if we have any comments. I'm not seeing any questions or comments. You know, one of the other things, John, maybe you could just mention, because I did read John's book, and that one of the takeaways for me that's a real practical application in what most of us do when we sell insurance, and the comment that I want to make was around the disability insurance and how important that was in John's life, that he had disability income insurance. And we know about that, and I think sometimes people go, yeah, it's a really tough sell. I know people quote it a lot, and sometimes it's hard to actually close the sale. In John's book, he quotes 95% of all accidents are off the job, and workers' comp doesn't pay. And so it leaves people really with two problems, right? One of them is they don't have an income while they're trying to get better, and number two, they're also not contributing to their retirement plan. And as John said, he was off for 6 years. That's 6 years of lost wages had John not had a disability policy. And one of the things that we recommend at KHI, when you're out there talking to your employer groups and talking to them about short and long-term disability, once you get the owners to buy it for their employees, then talk to the owner about his or her own disability income insurance policy. And if that's not your bailiwick, if that's not your area of expertise, then partner with someone who it is, because there's a lot of folks out there, just like John, that's what they focus on. That is what they do. They may not sell individual insurance, or they may not sell group insurance. They focus on disability insurance. So sometimes we leave that opportunity on the table. Either we don't feel comfortable enough talking about it. So I just really invite you to visit further with John if you care to, or just ramp up your game if you know that's already in your bag of products that you represent. You know, don't hesitate to bring it back up again. John's living testimony and proof to the fact of having disability insurance is so helpful. And John, I'll let you make another comment. It doesn't look like we have any other questions here. Go ahead.
Hey, Lynn. So just on that note, do you have medical insurance, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and so do I. I mean, and so there I am, 32 years old, lying in bed, and you know, no movement, nothing, looking like Frankenstein. I probably scared everybody with that photo. And in my mind, I was saying, geez, yeah, I got great medical insurance that'll take care of me. And it did, but only up to a point. And that point was, hey, I was able to leave the hospital, yeah, under my own power, but I had a long way to go. And so then people would say, well, yeah, but you had rehabilitation benefits in your medical insurance plan, and I certainly did. And when I went to Northwestern RIC, the world's greatest rehab center, I turned in my health insurance card, my medical insurance card, and they came back and they said, well, here we got good news and we got some bad news. The good news is you're covered, The bad news is it's one visit a week for 50 minutes. One visit a week for 50 minutes, and you have a copay, a max cap of 10 grand. Copay was 50%. You're a recovering C5, C6 quadriplegic. How's that working for you? And you see, disability insurance, unfortunately, it's got the wrong name. It's got the wrong name. It's really medical insurance Part B. It's the other half of medical insurance that we miss. It's the disability insurance gave me the cash, it gave me the resources, it gave me the money to hire my own team, my rehab people, to work on my body. I had that team of people for over a year putting my body back together, all paid by the disability insurance. And then the last comment on that is I call it the ability of disability insurance. So imagine Michael Jordan, the world's greatest basketball player. Some might argue, but I think he's the world's greatest basketball player. Do you think Michael Jordan insured his talents and capabilities? Well, of course he did. Michael Jordan had disability insurance. Why? He's protecting his most valuable asset, his talents and his abilities. And so why wouldn't the business owner protect the talents and abilities? Why wouldn't you protect your talents and abilities? Because it's those talents and abilities. It was my ability to make the phone calls, to go out and see the people, to go share my stories and my selling capabilities. It was those talents and abilities that allowed me to earn the income. And so why wouldn't you insure that in the event you have an accident or an illness?
John, that's fantastic. I love calling it ability and talent insurance, right? I think we should start calling it that. Hey, we do have a couple of questions and comments. First, I just want to say, Marcia Craig said, thank you, very inspiring presentation. And Sherry said, thank you, Lynn. This is an amazing webinar. Thank you, John, for sharing your journey. And then a question from Bob Joseph. His question is, what is John's best advice to succeed in the digital age with the Internet? For example, working with prospects and clients over the phone, over the Internet, et cetera.
Yeah, and geez, that's been going on for 10 years. It's a great question. So look at what we've accomplished today. Now, I probably could have done the webcam and done it that way to take it to a whole nother level. But this capability using GoToMeeting in whatever form you do is already happening. So how do I do it? Here's how I do it. Just as I did this morning, I already met the client. People still want belly-to-belly, but after belly-to-belly, they're very comfortable in efficient work over the web. And here's how I do it. So I'll go meet them belly-to-belly. We'll set it up. They'll say, yep, I want to work with you. And then we'll start to implement strategy, or we'll do further fact-finding over the phone or via GoToMeeting. And then here's the next piece. Hey, Bob, love to take you and your wife to dinner, next week, or let's get together, for coffee a couple of weeks from now. So it's don't miss out on the relationship building meetings. I just happen to have shorter business meetings using technology. Technology's the tool, but I still need to do relationship meetings. Out of sight is still out of mind. However, you can leverage technology to run more efficient meetings, and you just ask for their permission. Hey, would you have any objections if we just do this next meeting over GoToMeeting? Take 20 to 30 minutes of your time. I can do a show and tell, just like we did today, and just ask their permission. And here's what they're going to say. New school will always say yes. Old school, look at old school, they'll probably say, hey, I'd prefer to get together. That's okay, but just ask their permission.
Great. Thanks, John. I don't see any other questions. I'll give you one last chance. If you've got a question you'd like to ask, please type it in.
I'll tell you one quick story while we're doing that, and I'll be very brief. So I'm in Philadelphia. I'm at a meeting. I'm stranded, missed my flight, weather, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm hanging out in the bar having dinner, and behind me is this guy. And people were coming up to kissing this guy's ring like he was like a rock star. And well, he was in his own world, his own community. Turns out he is a referee. And everybody knows him. Well, his wife, as it turns out, because he was speaking loudly, I could hear everything, his wife happens to be a physician. And he says, well, yep, and I'm going to have to get her disability insurance. And he said it so loudly, I just turned to him, and he looked at me eye to eye, and I said, well, I'm so glad you're sitting next to the #1 disability insurance writer in the universe. Now, that's a little arrogant, I know, but I put it out there anyways. And by the end of the night, he slipped me his name and number and said, hey, call my private cell number, and I'll hook up with you. And so remember some of the concepts? Positioning. Tell people exactly what it is that you do. Now, I've leveraged that relationship all through technology, back to Bob's question, all through technology, and we were able to provide disability coverage not only for him, but also for his wife. And then what's the next step? I'm flying down. I'm going to go visit with him to see if I can't leverage the relationship into the other referees in that particular conference. And so that's kind of how I've leveraged relationship, but I also leverage technology to move the relationship forward.
Wow. Great story, John. Well, I don't see any other questions or comments, and as John has said, he invites you to reach out to him directly. We will have a recording of this on our website along with the slides John's provided, so if you needed contact information or didn't get it earlier, just contact one of our KHI staff members and we'll get that for you. So with that, John, I just want to say thank you so much, and I look forward to staying in touch.
All right. Make it a great day. Daily victory, baby.
Take care. Bye-bye.